dust. Earth was nothing more than a molten sphere, cooling slowly in the embrace of its nascent sun. Yet even then, it was marked. The collective that would one day be known as the Omniones perceived reality differently than most sentient beings would eventually evolve to do. They existed simultaneously across multiple planes of existence, perceiving time not as a linear progression but as a tapestry where past, present, and future were merely different threads in the same grand design. From their perspective beyond conventional space-time, they witnessed Earth's potential, a rare convergence of physical and metaphysical conditions that would make it uniquely suited for the emergence of consciousness in its myriad forms. The planet possessed something extraordinary, a living core that generated not only a magnetic field but also a subtle energetic resonance that rippled through dimensions. And so, with intentions inscrutable to lesser beings, the Omniones seeded Earth with a fragment of their collective essence. This seed took root at a point where Earth's energy meridians converged most powerfully, where tectonic forces would eventually thrust upward to form what humans would one day call Firefly Mountain. The seed lay dormant for eons as Earth transformed around it. Continents formed and broke apart. Oceans filled and receded. The first stirrings of life emerged from primordial pools and gradually diversified, filling every available ecological niche with increasingly complex organisms. Through it all, the Omnione seed pulsed quietly beneath the surface, a beacon undetectable to physical senses but profoundly influential on the planet's development. When the age of dinosaurs dawned, the seed's influence subtly guided evolution toward greater neural complexity. Without directly interfering, it created conditions favorable for the development of consciousness, not just awareness, but the capacity for self-reflection, abstract thought, and eventually, what no being on Earth could know then was that these developments were being observed from afar by ancient, calculating eyes. Eyes that belonged to beings who had mastered interstellar travel when Earth's dominant species were still small, scurrying mammals hiding from predators. Eyes that recognized the unique potential the Omniones had seen in Earth, but with vastly different intentions for its future. The reptilian conquerors were coming. And so began the first chapter in the long and secret history of Earth. A history interwoven with the fate of what would one day be known as Firefly Mountain. # arrival of the Saurians. They came in the time of giants, when massive reptiles dominated Earth's continents and seas. Their ships darkened the skies of the late Cretaceous period, massive crystalline structures that distorted light around them like mirages. The indigenous creatures of Earth had no context for these visitors, no concept of technology or interstellar travel. To them, these were simply new predators arriving in their realm. But these visitors were predators of an entirely different order. The Saurians, as they would later be known in the whispered legends of stars beyond counting, were an ancient spacefaring civilization. Evolved from a species of intelligent reptiles on a distant world circling a dying star, they had long since transcended their biological limitations through a combination of genetic manipulation and cybernetic enhancement. Their original forms, bipedal reptilians standing 3 meters tall with scaled skin of emerald, obsidian, and crimson, had been preserved through countless generations of careful engineering. Their civilization spanned several spiral arms of the galaxy, built upon principles antithetical to those held by most sentient species. Where others sought cooperation, the Saurians revered dominance. Where others valued diversity, the Saurians enforced rigid hierarchies based on genetic caste. Where others might explore for the sake of knowledge, the Saurians conquered for the sake of resource extraction and territorial expansion. Their empire was ancient and patient. They did not merely conquer, they colonized, terraformed, and ultimately transformed worlds to serve their needs over timescales measured in millions of years. Earth, with its diverse biosphere and unique energetic properties, represented a prize of incalculable value. The initial Saurian landing occurred near what would eventually become the base of Firefly Mountain. Their sensors had detected the dormant Omnione seed and the convergence of planetary energy lines at this location. 23 crystalline ships formed a perfect geometric configuration around the mountain, and from them emerged the first wave of colonists, scientist priests of the Communion of Scales, tasked with assessing the planet's potential. These first Saurians moved with deliberate precision, establishing monitoring stations across the globe and collecting specimens of Earth's lifeforms for analysis. They were particularly interested in the dominant reptilian species, seeing in these creatures distant evolutionary cousins. The scientist priests began immediate experiments, accelerating the evolution of selected dinosaur species through genetic manipulation. Their work was interrupted when their instruments detected something unexpected: traces of omnione influence permeating Earth's biosphere. The Saurians had encountered the omniones before, on distant worlds across the galaxy. They recognized the subtle energetic signature and understood its implications. Earth was not simply a resource-rich planet, it was a world marked by one of the most enigmatic and powerful collectives in the known universe. This discovery elevated Earth's importance exponentially in the complex calculations of Saurian imperial strategy. The Dominator Prime of the nearest Saurian Empire promptly dispatched a full colonization fleet, thousands of ships carrying millions of Saurian colonists, warriors, and slaves. Earth was about to become the front line in an ancient cosmic conflict. Chapter 2. The Shadow Empire. The full Saurian colonization force arrived within a solar cycle of the initial landing. Massive ships positioned themselves at strategic points in Earth's orbit, while others descended to establish fortified settlements across the planet's surface. The largest concentration remained centered around what would become Firefly Mountain, where the Saurians began construction of a vast subterranean complex that would serve as their planetary capital. Using technologies incomprehensible to Earth's native life, the Saurians excavated enormous chambers beneath the mountain, reinforcing them with crystalline structures capable of channeling and amplifying Earth's natural energies. The mountain itself was partially hollowed out to accommodate specialized facilities, genetic laboratories, dimensional resonance chambers, and temples dedicated to the Saurian pantheon of cosmic entities they revered as gods. At the center of this complex, directly above the dormant Omnione seed, they constructed the Nexus Throne, a massive crystalline structure from which the appointed Viceroy of Earth could tap directly into the planet's energy grid. From this throne, a succession of Saurian rulers would govern Earth for millions of years, their lifespans artificially extended through genetic manipulation and energetic sustenance drawn from the planet itself. The Saurians' approach to conquest was methodical and multi-layered. Unlike more impulsive species that might simply eradicate native life or exploit natural resources until depleted, the Saurians took a longer view. They saw Earth's biosphere as a complex system that could be harnessed rather than depleted, a living machine that, with proper management, could serve their purposes indefinitely. Their first priority was reshaping Earth's dominant species to serve their needs. Selected dinosaur species were captured and subjected to accelerated evolution through genetic engineering. The most successful experiments produced the servitor clades, reptilian beings of enhanced intelligence who were biochemically conditioned for absolute loyalty to their Saurian masters. These servitors became the overseers of Earth's transformation, carrying out the will of the Saurians across the planet's surface. Simultaneously, the Saurians began manipulating Earth's climate and geography to better suit their physiological preferences. Using orbital arrays to subtly alter solar radiation patterns and deploying atmosphere-modifying technologies at strategic points around the globe, they gradually increased Earth's average temperature and humidity levels. The planet's equatorial regions became particularly hospitable to Saurian colonists, who established sprawling city complexes amid engineered jungles teeming with modified flora and fauna. For the Saurians, conquest was as much spiritual as physical. They believed that truly controlling a world meant dominating it on every level of existence: material, energetic, and dimensional. To this end, their scientist priests conducted elaborate rituals within specialized chambers beneath Firefly Mountain, attempting to establish what they called sovereignty resonance with the planet's core consciousness. These rituals involved complex geometrical arrangements of crystalline artifacts, precisely calculated sound frequencies, and the sacrifice of genetically engineered beings whose neural patterns had been optimized for maximum dimensional resonance. The mountain's unique properties, particularly its connection to the dormant Omnione seed, made it the ideal focus for these efforts. As centuries passed, the Saurian dominion over Earth appeared absolute. Their cities rose above primeval forests, their servitor armies maintained order across the continents, and their scientist priests probed ever deeper into the mysteries of planetary consciousness. The native dinosaur species continued their existence, largely unaware of the intelligent overlords who now controlled their world's destiny. Yet beneath this apparent stability, resistance was stirring, not from Earth's native life, but from the subtle influence of the Omnione seed, which had begun to awaken in response to the Saurians' presence. Chapter 3. Dimensional resonance chambers beneath Firefly Mountain reported anomalous energy fluctuations. Servitor clades exhibited unprecedented behavioral deviations, including spontaneous disobedience and even rudimentary philosophical questioning. Most alarming to the Saurian leadership, the Nexus throne itself began periodically rejecting its occupants, causing physical pain to any viceroy who sat upon it for extended periods. The cause of these disturbances remained elusive to Saurian science for decades. Their instruments detected subtle energy shifts emanating from deep beneath the mountain, but the source could not be precisely located or categorized within known phenomena. The Communion of Scales dispatched their most accomplished scientist priests to investigate, but even these experts found themselves confounded by the increasingly erratic behavior of Earth's energy grid. What the Saurians could not fully comprehend was that the Omnion seed, dormant since Earth's formation, had begun an awakening process triggered by the very efforts of the Saurians to dominate the planet's consciousness. The ritual workings conducted beneath Firefly Mountain had inadvertently provided the energetic catalyst needed for the seed to initiate its next evolutionary phase. As the seed gradually activated, it began subtly influencing all life within its expanding sphere of consciousness. This influence manifested differently depending on the receptivity of each organism, but its most dramatic effects appeared in species with more developed neural systems, particularly the servitor clades and, to the horror of the Saurian leadership, some lower caste Saurians themselves. The first documented case of what would later be termed consciousness inversion occurred in a mid-level Saurian administrator named Zaleth. While supervising a dimensional resonance experiment, Zaleth suddenly collapsed, experiencing what witnesses described as violent convulsions followed by a state of suspended animation lasting 17 hours. When Zaleth regained consciousness, the administrator's personality had fundamentally transformed. Where before there had been rigid adherence to hierarchical protocols, now there existed philosophical curiosity. Where there had been unquestioning loyalty to the Empire, now there were probing questions about the ethics of planetary domination. Most disturbing to Zaleth's superiors was the administrator's claim to have experienced direct communion with what was described as the underlying consciousness of Earth itself during the suspension period. Zaleth reported visions of a vastly different potential future for Earth, one where diverse consciousnesses evolved in harmony rather than dominance, where the planet's unique energies were channeled toward collective elevation rather than imperial resource extraction.